Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm Fabian for Liberty. The website's fabianforliberty.com. New Fabian Calvo show episode link is down below. I break down the latest with Ebola. Now a second nurse in Dallas has been infected by the disease, and supposedly she flew from Cleveland to Dallas with fever symptoms. And then that plane actually flew another 5 or 6 times. And so today on Wall Street you have airline stocks getting hammered. Will this potentially collapse the U.S. economy, the global economy? It definitely could. But the fear alone could take already a fragile economy and really put a significant strain on it. All of that's broken down. Again, new episode of the Fabian Calvo Show. Link is down below. But in this episode, or in this video, I want to talk about 2 signs that have just happened this week that speak to the global economic reset that I've talked about now for years, and really speak to the heart of a video that I did now almost 12 months ago titled, it's actually in the Global Economic Reset playlist that I have, dealing with the 7 signs to look for in a global economic reset. And 2 of them have just taken place, or they've been taking place, but we've seen some big developments this week, and they're perilous signs for the US dollar and for the unsuspecting average Westerner out there that will be completely destroyed financially when these events all just happen one after another and begin to happen in a quick manner. The first one is the super alliance between Russia and China. I talked about this at length yesterday on the show, but just this week, and we've seen already, like the last couple of years, the bilateral trade agreements that we all know about, everything else. But just this week, because of the sanctions levied against Russia by the West, Russia has now turned toward China, and China, for that matter, has turned towards Russia to really make up a lot of the credit that is no longer being issued to Russian companies and Russian banks. Now, of course, the Chinese banks cannot make up for all the credit from the West and all the credit that was lent to Russia, but they could make up for some of it. In this case, the Import-Export Bank of China is now giving Russia $2 billion or more in credit, they say a year, to buy Chinese goods. And that's just one start. They're also going to make an investment of tens of billions in completely revamping the Russian railroad system, as well as building new passenger airplanes for the Russians. In turn, Russia is going to sell high-weapon military weaponry and technology to the Chinese. Also, in May, we had Vladimir Putin basically strike a $400 billion gas-oil deal with the Chinese. There's now talk, or now it's come out, that they have now doubled the size of that, and also doubled the size of their currency swap as well. So clearly, this super alliance is taking place. It's happening. I don't believe the Russians by themselves or the Chinese by themselves can take out the US dollar. But collectively working together, these companies and the BRICS as well represent a big enough economic union to challenge and rival the EU and America. Now that might not happen next week, might not happen tomorrow, but it is a significant development to watch, as both, I believe, Russia and China, again, not perfect, run by a bunch of authoritarians. You could make a strong argument, I think I could make a very good argument, that some would say you're maybe freer in China than you are in the United States as far as running the company is concerned, or that there's more traditional values, more standing up for the family in a place like Russia than we have in America. So, I mean, I can make the argument either way. But just from an economic point of view, certainly these 2 countries are not able yet to dethrone the US dollar, but the direction is clear where this is headed. Now here's the second thing, the second sign. One of the things that I've talked about now for well over a year is the dismantling of OPEC. Now, earlier this week I posted a video where I was basically touching on this theory that somebody was putting out there, I believe on Zero Hedge, that the Saudis and the US were actually teaming up together to try to cripple oil prices to hurt the Russians. And that's not true. The truth has now been revealed. A bunch of experts in oil, a couple that I know personally, others that have been quoted by the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and others, are all now saying the Saudis are basically trying to get as much market share of the oil market as possible, upsetting a lot of the other OPEC nations. They're doing this because America, if you recall, just a couple months ago, became one of the largest exporters of oil in the world and has some of the largest reserves in the world with all the shale gas and everything else that the psycho-liberals want to basically shut down. They don't want to build they don't want to build pipelines. They don't want to have energy independence because it's all part of this globalist model. But the point is that they are flooding the market with cheap gas because all of the shale gas developments in America, ladies and gentlemen, oil needs to be above $60 a barrel roughly for those developments to be profitable. If the Saudis collapse the oil price, then investments and development of those current oil fields that are at record levels in America come to a halt because it's just not profitable anymore, and they begin to lose money in the free market economy, which we still have a little reminiscence of that. It doesn't work well when that happens. So two big signs happening right now. I do believe OPEC will eventually break up and disintegrate. It'll be basically every man for himself. The Iranians will go with the Russians and Chinese. Venezuela will go with the Russians and the Chinese. The Saudis may go with the Chinese, already the Chinese being the #1 buyer of oil from the Saudis. So the Saudis have no real stake in it as far as continuing to sell oil in the US dollar. The only thing they still get is military protection. But when we see the Russians and the Chinese making double-digit investments in their oil or in their military, it's very probable that China say, hey, we'll protect you in exchange for basically you selling oil in the yuan or whatever it may be. So these are developments that unfortunately are not being spoken of enough because of the Ebola scare. Totally valid, totally legit with this Ebola thing. The Centers for Disease Spread, the guy who runs that, Freakin, whatever his name is, should be arrested for crimes against humanity. He should be thrown in prison immediately, but of course he won't. It is criminal what they're doing with respect to the Ebola thing and some of the others, the open borders, still allowing flights from Western Africa to come into this country. But at the bare minimum, it is criminally negligent to have Ebola victims going to just regular hospitals instead of biocontainment hospitals like the one in Nebraska. That is absolute criminal. In any court of law, that negligence would be a criminal act, if you ask me. But again, we have an illegitimate government, full-blown criminal, that can, basically play by a completely different set of rules. So what do you think about the global economic reset? Again, to be clear, I don't want to freak people out. I don't think this is happening tomorrow. May not happen next week. May not happen in a couple of years. In fact, I still believe that we will have the globalists are getting ready. In fact, the San Francisco Fed Reserve guy yesterday was making the case for how we need QE4. That's going to be something, the drum that they're going to begin to beat here in the next month, as the economy clearly, on a lot of different fronts, is slowing down, but not everywhere. I was looking at a graph today, for example, of home prices in Detroit, in the 4 major counties. I'll post it on my Facebook page. 50 to 100% price appreciation year after year in those counties.